All right, the meeting recording has started.
Let me go. Good evening. We're starting. Shut down the computer. Glad you're here. He's got an excellent speaker. Biased. I worked with him for, I don't know, about 8 years. So, he's an amazing guy. I really enjoy this. And I've already been through his presentation. So, it's 2025. And our first meeting of the year. Slide, please.
It was. Okay, it was clicking. I don't know why it didn't there.
So Keith Heaney, our project manager, is doing really clover surveys. And if you want to get involved, he's the guy who did it.
Next opportunity will be in March.
Okay, so there we go. I was going to go tomorrow, but I fell, screwed up my arm. I can't do anything, walking on the sand without screwing it up more. Next. Oh yeah, and we also will be running a Palos Verdes Blue Butterfly Habitat program. Hopefully, so that a little bit more. Okay, and that will be later this year. In the fall.
Yeah, well, the students and I are working on some preparation activities now, but butterflies will start flying about a month from now. So
yeah.
if not sooner. So
well, if it doesn't rain, they're not going to fly because there won't be anything to nectar on.
The deerweed surprisingly is blooming. So.
You know, the reason why I think it is, we had 2 really heavy years of rain, and a lot of water got drilled into the soil. And I've been checking, like in my yard and at our adopted plot. There's a lot of moisture contained in the soil. Now, if we have if our winter doesn't produce anything, and we have another dry fall and winter, I don't think we'll see much rain. The good news is the weeds aren't growing in the habitat. Have you noticed that, Chris? Yeah. That's the only good news. And so this is the western snowy clover. They're about that long. They're as cute as all get out. The way they survey them is they walk. They're going to be ready to walk on sand, soft sand. The less experienced people go down to the lower part of the sand to get harder. And then here's a Palos Verdes blue butterfly. It's got blue wings about the color of red or Webmaster is a vibrant blue color on the males. The females have much so much. Or you can just hike gently.
Yeah, and also descent they know too.
Yeah, okay. Since we haven't had any rain, but the deerweed is looking pretty good.
Yes, I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, additional plants have started.
As long as the deerweed's popping out,
yeah.
that's good. The stragglers, the bladder pod.
We don't have any in our
Recording in progress.
Yeah. It seems to me that they really do well on the deerweed, but it depends. If you're in a sandy area, the deerweed likes the sandy area. If you're in a high clay content soil, like much of the Palos Verdes Peninsula is, the deerweed doesn't like it so much, but the astragalus, I use the scientific name, but the rattle pod, there we go. And the rattle pod is okay for the butterflies, so they go two ways. And I don't think this was a reason. I don't think them using two different host plants is a recent development. It's pretty evident rattlepod likes the high clay content soils and Derby likes the sandy stuff. So there you go. And the way you test it is reach down and feel the soil. And if it's really, really fine, you're gonna find real fish. And if it's a little more coarser, it's heavy. So, I want this to be a readily accessible program. So, if you really want to see the program, but you know, they're not going out for the night, you can watch it live on the web on Zoom or watch it later. Okay, and after that, we'll go on to the presentation. Chris has, oh, I do have news, and we'll deal with it a little bit more in February. We have a new vice president. Yep, and he seems like a really wonderful guy. The two of you will have grand time together. We just have to do the formal protocol. Get them on board. So, Chris, I want to introduce you. Come on. This is Cris Sarabia, and he's an amazing guy. He's really, you can't say enough good about him. And he has a good friends on the field too. I worked at the Conservancy. He's worked for the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy since about 2008. Yeah. So there you go. Let's go sit around here.
How's that? Sound good?
I'm not sure if it's getting it from there or from here.
I can yell.
I think you're coming across good.
I'll start going. You let me know. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, Ann, for inviting me. I've known Ann since 2009. I was a young chap, a little less of a beer belly and not so gray hair, and so Ann taught me a lot. So appreciate being here. Appreciate sharing this. Actually, this is a lot of what the work that Ann had worked on at the Conservancy, and we continue to this day. And yeah, exponential growth on all the work we're doing out there. So I'm gonna, I'll get into it. I'm Cris Sarabia, and I'm the conservation director with the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy. Go to the next slide.
Theoretically, it was going to work. There,
All right.
now it might work.
So our mission is to preserve land and restore habitat for the education and enjoyment of all. You'll see how we do that. And oh, there it does work. So for those that don't know us, we protect about 1,700 acres of land, open space out on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. And so you can see all those areas in yellow, orange, blue, and white are those 1,700 acres. We recently acquired these 96 acres right in the middle there, right smack dab in the middle. And that was a huge win for conservation. Those were slated for development, kind of this open area that we're calling a wildlife corridor. It was actually designated a wildlife corridor way back as an important connector between these upper areas, these higher elevation zones on the peninsula, and then these lower area like Abalone Cove Reserve. So it connects those areas which a lot of wildlife cannot get across these zones because there's a lot of development there. So this is a really important zone, but so is everything there. And I'll talk a little bit about that.
Sometimes I'll try it.
All right. And so some people watching this later, some people here may not know where that's at. This is PV Audubon, right? I assume everyone knows where it's at, but just in case, this is us right there, sticking out, you know, on the SoCal coast, next to Long Beach. This is a Google map, so this is what you see. And what you notice here is all the green on the outskirts, but no green in the middle there. You know, Los Angeles, we're a concrete jungle. We could drive for hours and still be in the city, right? On a nice trafficy day. And so here's a nice map put together by Studio MLA. And this is our urban wildlife connectivity analysis they did many years back. But this image always sticks in my head when people talk about Los Angeles. And so what it shows in the bright pink is this high intensity developed area. And then the lighter colors, almost gray black, is open space. And so, you know, you just keep an eye on the peninsula where we still have that open space. You got some in Santa Monica, you got the San Gabriels, you got the Santa Anas, but really everything else is really pink, bright pink, like a splatter of blood there. And so the next slide kind of continues with that theme where, you know, the opposite is we have these wildlife habitat zones. And so you can see the pink is now showing critical habitat and significant ecological areas in like a bluish green, and then natural landscape blocks in green there. And so, you know, we do have this challenge of all that black where we don't really have connectivity between all those areas. You know, we work, some people here, PV Audubon, South Bay Audubon, we work with the butterfly. A lot of us do, right? Because that's our El Segundo blue butterfly or Palos Verdes blue butterflies. Those are here. But in other areas of Los Angeles, we have P22, we have mountain lions, we had P22. And so, you know, maybe butterflies are able to fly, you know, across these areas, but our mountain lions can't. But maybe our butterflies can't either because they don't have areas to land. I know Audubon and Anne and a lot of others have worked hard to create these jump off points. So I like to share this just as we zoom out. And continuing to zoom out, I'm a plant guy. I'm into plants. And so something important about Los Angeles is we're part of a bigger area called the California Floristic Province. So you can see it here. It doesn't extend into the desert area. A lot of people call Los Angeles, California, a desert. But we're not. We're something called a Mediterranean climate, which I'll get to in the next slide. But just something to note here is there's a lot of biodiversity in this California Floristic Province here, from our redwoods up north to our agaves down in Baja and Dudleyas throughout, right? And so they all look so very different, but they're part of this diversity of species, you know, over 6,000 California native plants throughout this whole floristic province. And it's very important. We have, because of these plants, we have an extensive amount of species of animals and other critters of butterflies and birds using those plants. And so zooming out a little more, the California Floristic Province is part of something called the Mediterranean Climate Zone. And so I mentioned we're not a desert, we're part of a Mediterranean climate. You can see those lines there. That's the latitudes that we're in to create this Mediterranean climate. There's 5 in the world. You see them here. California is 1, Chile, the Mediterranean, South Africa, and these lower areas of Australia. And so these are global hotspots. You have species that are found in these areas that are found nowhere else. And we actually share species. A lot of species from these areas like South Africa and Australia grow here as weeds. We got ice plant, we got eucalyptus, things like that. And then vice versa, they say that our California poppies are weeds in Chile. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten to see that, but I haven't. I hope to one day to see our poppies in the full super bloom in Chile. But I'm sure that they don't want to see that. Yeah. But anyway, what's characteristic of a Mediterranean climate zone is hot, dry summers and cold, wet winters. And so we get that, right? We're used to it. And everyone here from California originally, and if you're not, now you're used to that, right? That's what we get every year. Except maybe this year. We're not getting any rain yet, but hopefully this weekend.
You know, what I find interesting is the Mediterranean climate zone covers about 2.25% of the landmass on the planet. And yet they have like 25%, I don't know around that. They have an overabundance amount of diversity, plant diversity. So I work with some professors and they said, if somebody took you and put you in a helicopter and then brought you somewhere into a different Mediterranean climate zone, you would think you were in California.
Yeah. I've been to the Mediterranean and I was like, whoa, these plants, I know these plants. And the temperature and everything felt very familiar. Yeah.
Because they've adapted to the long, dry summers and the cool, wet winters. And most plants on this planet live in areas where the most precipitation occurs in the summertime. Doesn't here.
Yeah, so very important. Zooming back in, you can see in the bright blue, we have the most native species in all the US. You have a little bit of pocket, down here on the East Coast, but for the most part, we're rock stars in the plant world. So we're considered a biodiversity hotspot, which is great. We have a lot of biodiversity, but that also means that we've lost a lot of habitat. To qualify as a biodiversity hotspot, you actually have to lose 70% of your species have been lost to qualify. It's a weird designation, but it also means we have a lot to strive for to protect, because we still have a lot more than most other states. So zooming back, and so we have a lot of endemic plants. A third of our plants are found nowhere else on the earth. Just in case some people here don't know what a native plant is. So these are plants that were growing here pre-European exploration on the West Coast. So they weren't brought in. They were always here with the indigenous people that were living out here on the West Coast. These plants have co-evolved with the animals, the fungi, the microbes, and the people. And so there's extensive networks and relationships that we talk about with our butterflies and our birds. And so without these native plants, we don't have an ecosystem. These are the foundation of native ecosystems. So very important. And just to note, a great example of why native plants are important, we have milkweed and the monarch butterfly. And there's a relationship there that maybe wasn't as paid attention to a couple years back, but we started to see our monarchs disappear and realize there was something wrong. Milkweed was disappearing, and the monarch is one of those 90% of species that needs their host plant to survive. They have a very specific plant. Palos Verdes blue butterfly is another one. It uses 2 host plants, right? Alsagondo blue butterfly is another one, right? Uses the buckwheat, the dune buckwheat. So we need those native plants. Otherwise, we lose life. And so just to keep pounding, because I'm a plant guy, pounding into your brains, this is what a bird would see, right? They show up to your yard. This is what we have in our yards, but they see it as foraging hubs. Every single bush, every single tree, Even the grass, if it had food in it, they see it as foraging hubs. And when I saw this image put out by Doug Talamy, I remembered as a kid just sitting in the yard and I'd watch the birds go into the trees, chasing each other. And I thought they were just playing, but they were actually feeding in there. They're looking for little caterpillars and things that are squishy with protein. Not so much seeds, they're eating seeds, but really they're looking for those caterpillars that have a high protein source so they can feed their young. That's what baby birds need. And sure, they'll eat seeds, but really we need native plants that host native insects to feed our birds, right? And so that's just an image that always sticks in my head. So what we plant matters, and things like this don't provide as much food source for our birds, for our butterflies, for our species. Sure, they provide, but not as much as what has co-evolved together, right? All right, so enough of that, enough of pounding the native plants on you into your brains. So back to us. These are the lands we work on. We work across different cities, City of LA, Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills Estates, PV Estates, sometimes into Long Beach. And so different jurisdictions, different agreements, but the most important part is that these lands are conserved in some manner. And so the main habitat we work with is coastal sage scrub. And there's other habitats like riparian and grasslands and other habitats, but really the majority of the lands on that peninsula are coastal sage scrub. And what's kind of sad is more than 85% of those areas have been lost, either to development or agriculture, and some just to invasive species. And so you kind of saw that, right? We're in Los Angeles, concrete jungle, and so we've lost a lot of these wild areas. And so here's an example of that. The areas in red are what we manage as conserved area, and then there's developed areas in between. And so you can see all these homes, tract homes, and then you see the green space. And so we've lost a lot of coastal sage scrub to those areas, but that's fine. We can work with that. And so what I'm going to share today is what we've been working on. So those red areas are areas that are part of the Palos Verdes Nature Preserve. And so every 3 years, we actually do a California gnatcatcher, which is a threatened species, and a cactus wren, which is a species of concern. We do surveys, we do bird surveys to keep track of them, see how they're doing, because that's one of our species of concern that we work with, and we strive to improve habitat for them. And so within those red areas, we went out and surveyed 2024. I'm going to share some of those results with you and then kind of explain what we've been doing with those results over the years. But the 2024 survey, we found 51 California gnatcatcher territories and 6 cactus wren territories, which for the gnatcatcher territories, that's twice as much as we saw in 2021. It doubled. For the cactus wren, not so much. It was the same amount. And so we actually saw cactus wrens not in all our reserves. We also found brown-headed cowbirds observed last year. And so that's not a good sign. They're predatory nest predators. They basically move into gnatcatcher nests, throw out the eggs or the chicks, and then lay their own eggs and do the whole thing. And anybody ever seen that? We saw it, we observed it this year. So we actually took action and started to put out cowbird traps to deal with it. And we're monitoring to see if there's more cowbirds this year. We also found that cactus wrens were very quiet and secretive this year, probably in other years as well. But we found that they're very quiet and secretive when ravens were around. And so we would have these mobs, these murders of ravens, 60 or more, flying around on those thermals and foraging. And so then the cactus wrens would hunker down, which makes it really hard to monitor, right? Because they're in the cactus. They live in the cactus and we're not going in there. So it was really hard to figure that out, but we thought that was very interesting that they're definitely understanding that the ravens are predating on them. And so I'm not a fan of putting a lot of text on my slides, so I apologize. So I broke it up with some nice pictures of gnatcatchers here. Okay, something very interesting we found. We actually had a consultant from Endemic Environmental come out and help us do the surveys, and we found 16 territories of gnatcatcher at Vicente Bluffs, which they said they've never seen that in their whole career. They've never seen that many gnatcatchers in one location. So that was pretty interesting, though we didn't see any nestlings or fledglings at that location. So either we timed it wrong, we just missed them, or they're not having successful nestlings. So that's interesting. We did observe 10 groups, family groups in the preserve. So there was some success there. We'll see what results we see this year when we do surveys. And so we ask ourselves, what are the potential reasons for the increase in 2024? Well, before that, we had 2 years of above average winter rainfall, as we all know. So that potentially provided more food sources. We did more surveys, more in-depth surveys last year. So maybe more eyes on the ground. Maybe that's why we saw more birds. Since 2021, we increased our habitat restoration tenfold. We've been doing a lot of work out there in various different ways, which I'll share. And we've been removing a lot of large invasive species on the preserve. So those all could be factors, but there's so many factors that maybe we're missing, we may not know. Here's some cactus wren pictures. A little chicken there, crying for food.
Turn up the light so people can see the
Yeah.
images better.
And so lot of text, but really what I wanted to share all the info, right? And so what other reasons did we see maybe cactus wren not in high numbers? Why were they the same numbers as before?
Can you move over this way a bit so they can see? Good.
As long as the camera can see me,
Oh, no.
you good? Okay, so we're seeing a shift in the climate, and there's unpredictable winter rains, and so that may be an issue where in February of 2024 we had a lot of rain, but it was late, and so it potentially delayed the food availability, which means then the nests were later, and then everything just kind of was later, and so these are multi-brood species, so they do a couple attempts at nests, and so potentially there was less nesting, right? And so that could have been a factor why our cactus wren were at still kind of low numbers. A lot of weeds, a lot of rain means a lot of weeds, and I was talking about it. So we did see a lot of mustard out there in previous years. We also saw an increase in Cooper's hawks, ravens, as I mentioned, and scrub jays. And those are avian predators, so they do predate on the nests of the cactus wren. Our cactus, due to weeds, due to drought over the years, off and on, things, this back-to-back drought and then intense rain, our cactus patches are suffering. And so we've been doing a lot of work to try to work on those cactus patches in maintenance and enhancement. And so that could have been a factor. Here's a cactus wren building the nest. Okay, a couple more points. The return of brown-headed cowbirds and nest parasitism could have been an issue, why we saw low numbers of cactus wren. We actually had not noticed brown-headed cowbirds for a while. We see them every once in a while flying by, but we didn't see them stick around for many years until last year. What else? fragmentation. And so we had continued development in the city around us. And so birds potentially weren't getting from one reserve to another. That's why that wildlife corridor is so important. We need to have these connections. So there was a study done in 1998 by Atwood. I don't know if Ann, you worked on that with Atwood, but basically the gist of it is what they found is that the bold area down there, restoration areas are supporting nesting California gnatcatchers. So restoration works. Even small satellite patches, perhaps not suitable for nesting, could support dispersing birds across the landscape and keep some genetic flow. And they also noticed that gnatcatchers could disperse up to 3 kilometers. And so, you know, there's a lot of projects that a lot of us have been working on that provide habitat and yards and even pocket parks, right? And so this study from 1998 really emphasizes that even those little pockets are helpful in helping birds disperse maybe from one reserve to another or keep moving in a direction where there's more habitat. So here's someone, anybody recognize Ann there? There's an older picture, but I found it. And there's a nice cactus, right? All right, and this is my last slide with a lot of text. We do have a community science program. So that what I was talking about right now is a triennial bird survey that we do every 3 years. That you know, people with permits come out, a lot of hours under them, experts in the field, permitted by CDFW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife for certain birds, right? And so we also have a community science program because we don't want to wait every 3 years to get this data. And so our community science program, which by the way starts March 1st, is our first training. If anybody here wants to come out and help us track our birds, particularly cactus wren and gnatcatcher. But what our program kind of gave us back a couple years ago was what observations showed that about the majority of cactus wrens are using about an acre in size with about 30% prickly pear cactus in it. That's where they're hanging out. And they prefer large cactus. I mean, kind of obvious, but I don't think it was as obvious. Like, we didn't know the amount of area or what, right? What exactly they were using. So by a year to year, back to back community science program, we were able to figure that out. And other things, there's a bunch of text here that just explains so many other things that are important. Even that last sentence, the cactus wren's natural tendency to stay close to its natal territory and not move great distances underscores the importance of having quality habitat throughout the preserves to help the species survive. So that's something we're working on as a conservancy, is to make sure that we have that. And continuing our community science program and our triennial bird survey. So I thought that'd be important to you all as Audubon, right? So I'm gonna show a million maps now, so you're gonna be sick of maps. I'm a map guy. And so, and sometimes I mess up on these maps as and knows, but these are the maps we created from the observations this last year. And something I want you to notice is how close they are and how much area they're using. They're basically using everything possible in the nature preserve. And so the CWA is cactus wren, the pink, and then the yellows are gnatcatchers. Right? And so these are territories. So you see them, this is Abalone Cove, so they're kind of all over in there. This is Alta Vicente, same thing, every possible nook and cranny. This is Forestal and Portuguese Bend. These are areas where it's not as dominated with lemonade berry that they were choosing. So they don't really like the older lemonade berry growth, but they're kind of all over the place, and they don't seem to mind the trails. You can see the trail system there. They don't seem to mind it as much. And here's the last one. Here's the one with the Vicente Bluffs with I think it was 16 territories, which they used every single restored area. The areas they didn't use were the areas that don't have any plants.
We
So,
actually see the gnat catchers around our volunteer restoration site.
yeah, which is
Oh, they're
right,
working.
right here, right? No, wait, where are we? Yeah, right here.
On the land side, but we're moving back into the on the other side of the trail where it.
Yeah, so great results what we're seeing on the restoration end. All right. And overall, they're kind of all over the place, but you still see gaps in there. So that's something we're working on, is to fill those gaps, but still maintain a standard in those areas that they're currently using, so that weeds or invasive species or any encroachments don't occur in there, so that they can come back. As we read, they tend to reuse their nests or their territories. Okay. So landslide. So we'll talk a little bit about landslides. We in Palos Verdes, we have one of the North America's largest and fastest moving landslide. You may have read about it in the newspapers or heard about it. If anybody's hiked out there, anybody hiked Pony Trail at all? Pony? And so this is Pony Trail right here. That's the trail there. It's, look at that drop. This used to be continuous, right? This is Pony Trail here and Pony Trail there. So it's about a 20-foot drop. And so the land is shifting. And so you could see why this area is closed. This area here is a continuation of those cracks on the right. This area, that was about, maybe that's 10 feet across, but when I went back, it was 20 feet by 20. I wasn't gonna cross it. I usually say, oh, I could cross this, it's fine. It was sketchy. And so these fissures have been opening up back there. Anybody hiked Burma Road Trail in Portuguese Bend? So this is Burma Road, or was. This is Burma Road there and here.
Oh, no wonder why I didn't recognize it.
So you can see this opened up. Same here. This is Burma Road on the right there. And these are the old Cal water pipes that would run along the edge. So now they're just floating. This was many months ago, so it looks very different, but it's just as drastic. On the left was last week. I was out there and this new crack had formed. That's also Pony Trail below the big cactus run patch up there. So that was new to all of us as we were out there surveying. And then on the right is the big fissure that crosses from Portuguese Bend to Forestall. And here's the Seaview neighborhood. And some of you have seen this is actually out of the newspaper, this picture. This is the Seaview. And then this is that beach everyone was talking about, a newly formed beach. So you see some uplift that was coming up, new tide pools. The area is off limits, but we're continuing to see some interesting stuff out there. I was out there last week and a lagoon had formed, which is interesting. And a second one looked to be forming. So very, very interesting if you're a geologist, very scary for the community. And so this is there's surveys done by the geologists that work with the city, and they have points everywhere. And this is in August, this is when it was moving the fastest, about 12 inches a week. And so you can see the red is the fastest moving parts, where the lighter colors, the blues and the violets, are slower. So it was moving fast. Oh, sorry, I don't need to do that. And this is from last week. It slowed down. You get about 4 or 5 inches in the middle there. So it has slowed down due to a variety of implementation that I'll share from the city's end. But so this whole area, I mean, you can see at the bottom here, Inspiration Point, Portuguese Point and Inspiration Point and Abalone Cove down here, Sacred Cove. Most of us have been out there. You keep your eye on those. Those are our trails that were there, and all this trail system is closed, right? Because it's sketchy. You saw those fissures. We don't want anyone falling down, especially I was walking down Pony Trail down slope, and I came across that fissure. I was like, good thing I wasn't, I was kind of going slow. I wasn't kind of going with the momentum. And so they're very dangerous. So we ask people to obey the signs. They're there for a reason. But I want to share, you know, the Land Conservancy, we're a habitat manager for the city. And so the city owns the lands, majority of the lands, and we serve to protect, to restore, to survey, and to give advice on the habitat. And we do a variety of things. There's a document called the NCCP, the Natural Communities Conservation Plan. It's a guiding document, breaks everything down. Everyone has their roles to take care of the land. But the city is working under emergency measures to try and slow this landslide for the reserve, for the community, for the roads, for everything going on out there. There's utilities running through, water, electricity, gas, some have been shut off. And so some implementations that the city has done is dewatering wells on the left there. A variety of dewatering wells have been put in place to pump out the water that's deep down below that is causing the landslide. There's water down in these deep benthic layers, and these guys are gushing out water in these deep dewatering wells, like, you know, hundreds of gallons an hour. And so they found where the source of the water is. There's a lot of wells out there. They've been lining canyons to prevent water from going back down into those fissures we saw, because the fear is water goes into the fissure, it's refilling those areas that are causing the slide, right? And so they're pumping it out, minimizing water going into it. They've also been filling those cracks to make sure no water goes into those cracks. Our job as a habitat manager is to document anything out there. The city has a actual crew out there that's watching everything the construction guys are doing, documenting everything, surveys of every type, bumblebee surveys, bird, butterflies, what else? There, cultural, geological, everything, paleo. So there's a whole team out there documenting. We work with them. We work with them because the ultimate goal is to slow this landslide, to stop it, if that's possible, and then to restore these areas, because this was something that had to be done to stop this. So our goal is to, all those footprints, we're measuring them, we're calculating them, we know what was there before. That riparian area, we calculate it, we know what was there. Actually, that area was full of weeds. It was one of my worst nightmares. I don't know if you remember, that's Klondike Canyon. There's pampas grass. It's the only place that had pampas grass, and I always, I don't know how I'm ever gonna restore that. That's how would I even get that stuff out of there? And so they took out the pampas grass for us. So what we're preparing for at some point is to restore these footprints. So we have a seed farm. We've been doing mass collections of seed and growing mass amounts of plants in anticipation of restoring this in the future. We don't know when yet, because it's moving, literally. It's a moving target, but we're prepared to restore this. And this is a riparian zone, and it had a handful of willows. So I'm excited to put more willows in there for our least Bell's vireo, for other riparian species. But I did want to share, you know, these are the landside in action. These are things going on. This is a picture from last week. So it's currently going on. We do monitor. We're still monitoring these areas for birds. We have wildlife cameras out there. We have the environmental consultant LSA out there monitoring every single species they encounter, sending them to specialists if they're not the specialists for it. And so we're gathering all this data so we can come back in and make this better, you know, and so trying to look at it optimistically because it is very impactful, but we are keeping track of everything.
So where is the water? How deep is it?
Very deep. I'm not a geologist. Hundreds of feet down, there was regular dewatering wells that would go, I think, 150 feet or something. And don't quote me on that because I'm not a geologist. These deep dewatering wells, they kept going down to do tests, and they realized, oh, there's more water further down. We need to go deeper. And so these deep dewatering wells are what's going on right now. I'm sorry, I don't know that number off memory. These reports are actually on the City of RPV's website on the landslide. So you could read this latest report as we speak. There's a staff report to the city council going on right now. You can watch that video as well and get a breakdown of what's going on. And so
You can tell it's a bigger rig because the
Yeah.
eye is so small.
yeah, and so, you know, boring holes were being done to get an idea of what was going on before massive work was to begin. So it wasn't a waste of resources, money, and choosing the right locations. Well, they realized, okay, actually, we need to dig deep and we need to do this now. There's an opportunity, and these deep dewatering wells they're gushing. I've seen the water flow out. You'd be amazed how much water is coming out of there. So we're waiting to restore these areas as habitat manager, but we're not gonna wait to do work. We're also doing work all over the peninsula as well. And so I'm gonna share just a whole bunch of maps of what we're doing, where we're working on throughout the peninsula as part of our efforts to provide habitat for our birds and our butterflies and all the other critters, right? This is Abalone Cove in blue. We recently restored that. It's doing pretty well. We have our 2 rare butterflies out there. This is where we saw gnatcatchers. We've seen a cactus wren come and check it out. We're hopeful this year they use it. The area above in green is Glass Reserve. That was a recently acquired reserve. A lot of cactus in there, so we're enhancing it. There's also a lot of acacia in there that we've been removing. A lot of little other polka dots of projects we've worked on. This is Alto Vicente. We restored it, coastal sage scrub, restoration there. All these splatters, and you know, I only have 45 minutes, so I was going to show pictures, but you can imagine a lot of these areas were just weedy patches or very minimal coastal sage scrub, or there was a fire in this area. And so after the fire, the weeds took over. And so we've been mowing, we've been grazing, and in this blue area, we restored 25 acres. Anne was still with the Conservancy at that time when we restored that. San Ramon, this green area, I've been grazing it with goats. It was 99% weeds. But this area in the corner actually still had Palos Verdes blue butterfly host plant for some strange reason. And so we're grazing everything to the right in anticipation of restoring it for Palos Verdes blue butterfly, potentially releasing this spring there because it's really good habitat. So enhancing this lower area because we know cactus wren has used it in the past, and it's very weedy due to the rains in the last 10 years or so. Three Sisters Reserve, we restored back when Ann was there, 21 acres. This area to the right is an area that cactus wren hangs out. That's our hotspot for cactus wren. If anybody's done cactus wren monitoring with us, you've probably gone there to see them because they're there every year, 2 or 3 territories. We've actually had to go in and thin out lemonade berry because it's starting to take over cactus. And we're pulling it back and mimicking a disturbance, maybe a fire or a grazing, maybe an animal came and would chew on that lemonade berry and pull it back. We don't have that. We don't have that in the preserve. There's too many homes for any type of prescribed fire, and there's no longer deer or any antelope that would have been out here back in the day. And so we have to mimic that. We're not killing the plant, we're just taking it back, letting it regrow over time, and then we're providing the cactus enough sun so that the cactus wren can use it. So we're kind of doing this all over the place. We got a grant recently, and we put together this plan on everything, pretty much in the ocean facing, but really all the lands. But we really wanted to focus on this area where we have all our species. We have our cactus wren, our gnatcatcher, our butterflies, and so many more species. Crotch's bumblebee even. So all the pink is acacia. Everyone know what acacia is? Acacia is like a shrub. It looks like a tree because it's huge, and it's this giant shrub that can, one plant can be as big as this room and really take over. And it took over really fast for us, where we didn't really notice it, or I didn't notice it. I was focused on mustard and other species, and this stuff just kind of got big and took over and replicated itself. So all these little pink polygons you see here is acacia. We actually just removed all that at the end of last year. So our plan is to eradicate all that. And what we're finding under there is cactus. We're finding sages. We're finding coastal sage scrub. We're finding host plant. Near where Anne's plot is down there, we find Palos Verdes blue butterfly host plants under the acacia. So we're removing these, and then we're actually seeding those areas with host plant, with coastal sage scrub in the same footprint right away. This area in yellow, we brought in the goats. I grazed, I forget, I think it was 50 acres of land in an area that's just been weedy, taken over by just non-native grasses and mustards. And back to those orange polygons, that's all acacia. We removed a lot of that actually. So this opportunity for us to go out and improve these areas has been well worth it, because if you look at the previous maps, all those areas we saw, the birds' territories are these same areas. So it's very quick for the birds to use the areas that we're clearing for them of invasives. We're gonna do a mass restoration back here in San Ramon Reserve. We were actually gonna do a restoration at the first slide, this one here, that blue area in the middle, but guess what? That's in the landslide zone. And so said, you know what? We're talking with the city. We said that it's our best interest to avoid that for now, because we are seeing cracks and things. It said, okay, let's move it somewhere. And actually, this is a way better location where we're moving it to, because this was a historic Palos Verdes blue butterfly site. So they actually used to exist on this switchback. This is Palos Verdes Drive East, and that's Palos Verdes Drive South. And so this is a hotspot. And we said, you know what, we can make this really great for the butterflies and all other species. That area is weedy. It's just so weedy. Our crew, back when I started in 2009, used to call it the rattlesnake patch, because there was just rattlesnakes everywhere and weeds. But rattlesnakes were just loving the weedy area there. So anyway, we're restoring that. A couple other more locations. This is Alta Vicente. That's Alta Vicente Trail. We got a different grant to remove acacia. Acacia is very fire prone. And so we're creating these buffers to remove potential plants that fuel fire. And then we're planting cactus and rattlepod and deerweed and dune buckwheat, which are smaller. They're a little greener. They're not as woody. They're woody, but not as woody. And we can space them out so it's less fire concern. So it's a win-win, right? We're removing this fire hazard and creating this habitat for all our species, not just one, but all of them. So that's what these projects were here, where we open the areas up, remove invasives, and in the same footprints, we're creating cactus wren, Palos Verdes blue butterfly, also going to blue butterfly and gnatcatcher habitat. So all these little patches. This is Philiorum Reserve. And then this is that area I was telling you about where we brought in goats in San Ramon. And we're enhancing these areas for our different species. Last one I'll touch on is Lunada Canyon. So Lunada Canyon is don't know if anybody's been there, beautiful area. Palos Verdes Estates is this sharp line here. And that goes down Lunada Bay. So that trail, you can take it all the way up from Lunada Bay and come all the way down if you'd like to take a steep hike. But this area we're restoring for Palos Verdes blue butterfly, all the area in green, as well as the area in gray. Working with urban wildlands on that gray area, and working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife on that green area. I don't know how we did it. We never thought we'd be able to restore this canyon, and we just keep bugging people and the money appeared. So we're planting this spring. We just started planting. If anybody wants to join us, you can go to our website and sign up to help us plant, post-plant for Palos Verdes blue butterfly, but also cactus wren and gnatcatcher. So everything we plant, all the habitat we're creating is for all the species, not just one. We're making sure that's an ecosystem. I think some people sometimes tell me, what are you going to do about the squirrels eating our plants, or what are you going to do about the gophers? You know what? This is their home too. There'll be a balance, and if we got to plant 5 extra plants so that they can eat, we'll do it. And it seems to work out. But these are all our little critters. And let's not forget the humans, right? We have our trail system. We have our kids come out from the education program. This is for us too. We tend to exclude ourselves from nature, right? There's this hands-off approach where we forget that we were always a part of nature, right? Not apart from it. And so something to always remember, we have to interact with nature. We have to spread the seeds and help plant and help weed and sometimes water. Nature will do it on its own in the mountains and untouched areas, but out here where we've already kind of built our homes next to these habitats, we need to help out, right? And so this is our nature too. So we need to make sure we enjoy it too and live with it. So I'll end that presentation with this cool nest in the cholla. We're supposed to, stick our hand in the nest to know if there's eggs and if things are working out, and I'm not going to do it. So I invite you all to come out and volunteer with us in helping us to monitor. Maybe you're the one who sticks your hand in there. But there's my email, and I'm open to questions if anybody has any
I've
questions.
got 2 questions
Yeah.
from Zoom relating to the dewatering wells. The first is, does emptying the wells create a void that would cause a collapse?
So I'm not a geologist, and that's not a question for me. I think there is a geologist in here.
Moving water would cause it to cause a collapse?
A void in the ground cause it to
No,
collapse.
Not in this case. In the case of like oil reservoirs, stuff, yeah, that can happen, things will sink. But in this case, you're removing water that's causing slippage on a plane underneath the earth. It's not, if anything, it might be sit down tighter.
It's a great
The
answer.
lowest pit might layer about 60 feet.
Yeah, yeah, well, or above, if they're pulling water from 200 feet, there's another bend.
Okay.
And then the second question is, does emptying the wells put the plants at risk of not having a water reserve in case there isn't enough rain, specifically relating to the willows that you're putting back that need the water?
So in my opinion, the dewatering wells, that water is so deep that the majority of our plants, if not all, are not accessing that. Native plants do have deep roots, deep tap roots. Even our grasses, I don't know if you've all seen that picture of the native grasses next to a non-native grass where they're so deep and they're very, those roots are very helpful to our ecosystems. They hold soil. And so I would say that the dewatering wells should not cause an issue. With water in the riparian areas, that could potentially cause an issue if water's not infiltrating down into the root systems of willows. If you notice on those areas, there's still dirt on the sides. And so there's still areas for plants to grow. This is my opinion, and I haven't put that much thought into it because I don't know the full, when that job is going to be done. But I would plant in the soil, and I would be comfortable with the willows or any other species succeeding.
And Palos Verdes website says that since September 24, 112 million gallons of groundwater have been pulled out of that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of water. People have asked us, can you use that to water plants? And no, it's very rich in minerals. At least previous studies to see if they could be reused said that it wouldn't work for plants. It could potentially kill them.
Is this water, is this movement generally attributed to 2 years of massive rains, or was it always there or just decided to happen?
That's not my expertise, so I don't know if it's all from those 2 years. I know that, the conversations have come up of doing isotope studies, to try to track where that water started to where it, came out. But yeah, it's a good question. It's a great question. And I would invite people to go to the city council meetings at Rancho Palos Verdes, like tonight. There's one going on right now, where the geologists, the city engineers, all these experts that are spending all their days on this, they probably have that answer. Yeah.
I can say that it almost certainly is from rainwater. It's all fresh water is always going to become meteoric. But you don't know what the delay is. It could have been from the previous. You don't really know what the delay is. And the answer to the other question about whether water gets pulled out, that water is going somewhere, right? And it's going down, right? It's going to be going down and maybe coming out in a seep somewhere out offshore. You don't know. But in any event, it was going to be leaving that area anyway. So yeah, yeah, that move, the water's moving. It's certainly meteoric. You just don't know from what year. Okay. And there is a delay. It can take some time.
Chris, in terms of future conservancy of lands on the peninsula, what does kind of the strategic forecast look like? I mean, is all the open space been conserved at this point, or do you guys see further opportunities that you kind of have your eyes on?
The 96 acres was the last large open space that we were looking at. There are other open spaces that we may not even know are available. So we're always open to working with different groups, HOAs. There's landowners that not as big, right, but a couple acres that are open to either donating land or negotiating for something. So we're open to it, but we don't have our eyes set on anything, at least in Rancho Palos Verdes. Yeah.
It seems like so filled with everything, but when I started working, it was like 1,200 or 1,500 acres, and now
Yeah.
1,700. That's significant.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, a
just
lot
never know it'll pop up.
Even in my time, the Philiorum wasn't a part of it. That got acquired. Another chunk on top of George F. Canyon got acquired. Yeah, so there's always things that come up that we didn't even expect. So we're always open to that. And a lot of these lands are not developable. So we will work with landowners to maybe put a conservation easement in, or look for different ways to work together so that these can be lands for wildlife. Yeah.
I'd like to have you comment about access. I used to hike in the Portuguese Bend once a week, and every year I give a contribution to the Conservancy. Now I can't go there. Wouldn't it be possible to open some trails or maybe make some new trails in safe places?
Yes.
It's just very frustrating to give money and I can't even see it.
Right. Yeah, so there's over 60 miles of trails on the peninsula. Only about 10-ish are off limits right now, rough number. And so there's a lot of other areas to go hike at this moment. We are, as you saw, the pictures, I thought, Pony Trail was accessible, and we saw there was a new crack. So the landslide is still moving. It's very unsafe. I'm a pretty adventurous guy, and I've kind of been terrified for my life, having to cross some of these areas. So I would say that those areas, we're waiting to see what's next. The city is very, they act on these comments very quickly, and we're always looking for ways to create loops so that people could still enjoy these locations if they're safe. And we work with them. If these trails are not trails that can be reopened, then we're gonna have to look at new areas to put trails in that are safe. I think we were even having conversations about that, and then before that red map occurred, and then it got really fast and said, no, we need to slow down. So I think when the time is right, those trails can be reopened. And if not, we'll have to find new locations. Yeah, me too.
Got another Zoom question.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
you go first.
did I understand you to say that the native plants are a little more fire resistant than the non-native
Yeah, so
weeds that come in?
So mustard, so the question was, are native plants a little more fire resistant than non-native plants? So mustard or annuals, non-native grasses, those typically dry out or have they're annuals, and so they become almost tinder, right? Almost just something that can burn fairly quickly. Our native plants, I'd say the ones that are annuals, even the perennials and the annuals, our perennial species are drought deciduous, which means in the summer they go dormant. But if you were to go out there and break a branch, they're still green, they're still holding moisture, they're still alive. And so yes, anything can burn, right, in the right conditions. But our native plants hold a little more moisture than this mustard, non-native grasses that have been seen to be more flashy type fuels that can help a fire move quickly. But yeah, I mean, coastal sagebrush, anything can burn, forest, but our plants have more moisture in them since they are alive still. If you go out there right now, it's been so dry, things they look dead, but they're not. You look at it, I usually will, scratch the bark, and they're green under because there's moisture in them. But yeah, anything will burn in the right conditions. Yeah.
Is there a reduction of the amount of the non-native mustard and the other plants that are such a headache? Have you been able to
Yeah.
get them removed?
Yeah, so I showed a lot of maps. I should have brought more pictures. I have a presentation tomorrow, public forum for City of RPV, where I show a lot of pictures, less maps. And something we've been doing a lot of is mowing and grazing. Where we time it before plants go to seed. So let's say black mustard. We'll go out when the mustard is flowering before any seed has developed, and we'll cut it. And sometimes it'll grow back and we'll come back in and cut it. And in a room like this, you might have 2,000 plants if give or take, right? And so what we do is we call it fleshing out the seed bank. So there's a bank of seeds down in the ground that are just waiting their turn, waiting for the rain, waiting for something to help them grow. Well, what we're doing is we're helping them grow, but we're killing them before they can replicate themselves. And so we've had a lot of success in doing large areas that way, where we can't spend a whole weekend with 50 volunteers just pulling. I mean, that's the best way, but we have 1,700 acres to work on. So we've been doing a lot of these strategic mowing, strategic grazing projects, and we've gotten rid of a lot of these mustard plants, and then flush out the seed bank. Yeah, Yeah,
So-
there was one more question.
Yeah, well, it turned into three while we were talking. So the first is, are goats the best method to control large areas of mustard? And the follow-up is, do you have the resources to hire the goats to clear multiple areas that you discover that have out of control mustard? And the third part of it is, and can the goats eat the entirely dried mustard stalks?
Okay, so first question, do we?
Goats the best method.
So we use a lot of tools. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox. Goats are one of those tools. They're not good for everything. Goats will eat everything that you put in front of them, given the time, if you leave them there for enough time. And so if you have a couple native plants, and let's say in this room, if we penned them up in here, they'd eat everything. And we don't want them to eat every single native plant. Sure, if we missed a native plant, they munch on it, it's probably gonna grow back. But if they started eating all the habitat, we don't want that. So you have to pick and choose your locations for goats that are appropriate. Typically, we use them in steep areas where it's safer for the goats to go in that don't tend to fall over. It's like a human, right? And so if you notice in the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, they're usually on these strips of steep areas where maybe a crew cannot get into. So sometimes the goats are good, sometimes they're not. The second question was,
Do you have the resources to hire to clear multiple areas?
yeah, so we do clear a lot of acreage every year. Right now, we do have the resources. We have some grants, so we try to include them in grants where the goats are appropriate. So I think in 2025, in the spring, late spring or mid-spring, I'll be clearing 3 areas with them. Meeting with the goat grazer tomorrow to look at other areas that are potential locations, but they're not cheap is the issue, because they come with a lot of goats. I think it's about, either between 600 and 1,000 goats. And they need someone to watch over them. So you need a trailer with the goat grazer guy, and they need water, and they need an electric fence to make sure they don't get out or anything gets in. And so, it sounds fun, but it's also not always the best avenue for weed control. Yeah. Was that okay? That was that. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And
we step away, want to show our appreciation. Thanks to our membership, and thanks to from the birds, I'm sure, all the work that you've been doing. And just a measure of appreciation is some funds that we are granting to you personally for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
And installing the other work that you do every day. So thank you very much. Thanks to the membership for making this possible too, for your donations.
Yeah, I just want to publicly, in front of our chapter membership, thank Cris. As you guys have been hearing, we've restarted activities for the Palos Verdes Blue Butterfly on Rolling Hills Prep Schools reserve land. And obviously, there's a lot of institutional knowledge about managing that type of habitat for the butterfly within the PVPLC, and Cris and his team have been very open to collaboration and sharing their knowledge so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel at Rolling Hills Prep. So thank you, Cris, for taking the
thank
time.
you. Thanks for taking that on.
Super busy.
Thanks for taking that on.
I
All
knew
right,
you'd
thank
be good, right?
Yeah.
He's quite an amazing guy. We'll take your
Oh, yeah.
your thing off. Now I recognize, and going through your slides, it just brought back memories of all these